See you again.
Nice to see you too, Michael.
All right, let's start off and take a look at juror number 79, another interesting character study, a guy who I think brings something to the table that would make both sides be a little weary and then also make them happy.
Absolutely agree. I thought he was, I was concerned with him, with the discussion on the presumption of innocence and Chauvin not testifying. I thought it could go a little sideways at that point, but he seemed to kind of right the ship in terms of where he was going with his answers. I think that he had something good for both sides and something to be concerned about for both sides. I think even with the addition of the additional peremptory challenges today, I think that he was a safe bet to keep on the jury.
Yeah, I wouldn't have used the challenge on him. I'm not sure any of his answers went far enough to get him excused for cause. So I think he was a fairly safe bet to be on the jury. Now, I want to talk to you about that settlement agreement and the fact that they had to go back and revoir dire some of these jurors. What was your take on that? I mean, that really was an extraordinary situation this morning.
I think that it was the right steps to take by the judge. I think this judge understands the weight of what is happening and how important it is for him to get things right in this trial. I think he handled it appropriately. I like that he didn't allow the attorneys to ask any additional questions. I thought it was appropriate for him to be the only one doing it. And, I think that the two that he left off, that he excused, it was perfectly appropriate to do so. I'm curious, though, as to how fast we can sit additional jurors, throughout the rest of this week. Time's running short in terms of when people are coming back. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out with this news, because it is such a jaw-dropping number. And the fact that it was released right smack dab in the middle of jury selection is very unfortunate.
I mean, you don't suspect anything nefarious going on there. I mean, because it is such an incredible number, and what it suggests, and even some of the statements made by the mayor in sort of announcing the settlement, it's almost hard not to think they would have known it would have some effect on this trial.
I don't think there's anything nefarious that was going on. I think that it was unfortunate and not well thought out. Most of the time, when I have civil cases that are happening and tracking a criminal case, most of the time we get our civil cases stayed during the pendency of the criminal matter. That way we can find out more information, get more discovery in the civil case. Usually you don't see the civil case settling first. It's like putting the cart before the horse. And you might have more information that will come out. I think that if the city was going to settle this case and do it before trial, they should have done it before jury selection. I think that doing it during jury selection was very unfortunate. I thought that the press conference was foolish. For the mayor to be standing there with George Floyd's family and with Benjamin Crump and his lawyers, I thought looked bad. So I thought that the optics on that were not very good. And I understand why Chauvin's team is very upset about this, and rightly so.
Yeah, without question. And again, it was the press conference. I mean, it was just, there was no way to avoid it, even though they do admonish every juror not to sort of go into social media, or if you do, try to stay away from news. But that was the type of thing you just turn on the radio and there it was. We heard a couple of people actually say that. All right, so now we have 4 women and 5 men on the jury. Actually, that matches kind of the demographic out there. It's about 50-50 with men and women. We were able to add a black gentleman to the jury. So now we have 5 white, 3 black, 1 mixed race. I want to get your impressions on the overall makeup of the jury now.
I think because of COVID, we're seeing a jury that skews younger, where the older jurors are choosing not to come or getting out of it because of COVID. I've never seen a jury this young starting to develop in any of my cases. But I think that the answers that I'm hearing is a jury that is kind of enthusiastic about being there, and not in a negative way. I think that the jurors that recognize that being on this jury is important, for our country. and that it's important to understand, how the process works and are interested in that process. So I think that despite the fact that we have a younger jury, which really concerns me a lot of the time, I think that we have a jury that is thoughtful. So I think that's really good, and educated. And I think that's really good as well.
Yeah, I think that if I had to say what's jumped out at me about this entire process, this jury selection process, it's been just how thoughtful all the folks who have come in are. I mean, they know what case they're being called for. They know the gravity of the situation, and they seem to be, for the most part, accepting that responsibility and seem extremely thoughtful. Has that surprised you?
No, it hasn't really surprised me, I guess, when I think about it. The last woman that was seated, I think, is a very good example of this. She understood and appreciated that the civil settlement was something completely different, and it wasn't going to go into this case, and that it was different parties. And when she was asked questions, if it's something that she hadn't thought about, she actually, under her breath, you could hear her, "I hadn't thought about that." So then you could tell that she was really concerned about making sure she thought about the answer before she gave it. And so it was a really good example of someone that really wanted to make sure that they weren't just blurting something out, but they were being thoughtful and appropriate about it. So I thought, she was a great example of how thoughtful this has happened and how it has played out.
Yeah, I was impressed by her as well. I think at one point she even said, she learns from her mistakes. If she's wrong and finds out she was wrong, she's willing to